Hey everybody, Coach here. Thanks for tuning in to an early December 2024 podcast. Hey, this week we are covering something that I've really never done before. I've always been very attentive in getting back to people who have asked questions or have left comments, etc., but I've never really shared them with everybody out there. And many times, if you're like me, you'll watch a video or something and a question will pop up in your head, but you never really get around to asking that question or getting that question answered. It kind of comes in and leaves. Well, not to take up a whole lot of your valuable time, but I'm going to throw answers to 6 questions that have come in repeatedly over the years. And maybe one of them is yours, or maybe one of these question and answers might prompt a question of your own. Not only will I get back to you, but I'll also share it here on the channel or the podcast. So, question number 1, let's get right into it. This one came from a guy named Kevin. And Kevin wrote to me, I'm a first-time home buyer with 0 gardening experience or knowledge. I come from an apartment life, and now I have a small home and a small yard. The yard is horrible. I can basically mow a lawn, and that's about it. We want to redo the front yard. Where do I even start? So I get various forms of this kind of question over and over again where people, they get into this analysis paralysis. And if you don't have kind of a guide to guide you along, I can see where that would be. It would be like if I wanted to do something outside of my expertise. You know, if I wanted to build a whole house, I got a little rudimentary carpentry skills and I got a little rudimentary plumbing and electrical skills. But if I was to just build a house, I know that I'd have to start at the foundation and build up, right? So in this particular case, Kevin is just kind of at a loss. He probably looks out into his backyard or his front yard and he goes, I don't even know where to start. So Kevin, basically, you have some steps that you have to take. I cover these steps in the 15-step DIY checklist for DIY landscapers. You should check it out over on the website, and it will give you a step-by-step. But let me do the down and dirty on it. First of all, you have to have the desire. If you have the desire to do a landscape project, then you need to jump off into a few things. First of all, what's your skill set? Second of all, do you have any sort of a sketch or an idea of a landscape that's really going to fill your lifestyle and your bill? Once you have that, you should get something down on paper, and from there, you should probably establish a budget. I always suggest having your sketch and your budget kind of align with itself. There's nothing worse than having a design or a sketch where you have a $10,000 budget and you have a $65,000 design. They just don't go together, especially if it's for a particular area that you really can't phase into existence. It has to be done, start to finish in order for it to be functional and finished within a reasonable time frame. So have those two things really work side by side with each other. Once you have the design and you have a budget, then go out and look for the things that you need. And this is including tools, both hand and power tools, which I'm going to cover in another question, and also maybe some help if you need it. And help doesn't have to be professional. It can be your circle of influence, your family and friends. Maybe you'll have a start date on a Saturday morning and you're going to do the demolition. And once you get that far into the planning phase of it, then you find a tipping point, one way or another. You're either going to go, no, this is just way too much for me, or you're going to go, aha, I know what I need to do now. I got a step-by-step. I know what needs to be done. The first thing is I got to get rid of what's out there now. So you may have to mow it down to nothing. You may have to mow it down and till it under, or you may have to spray it and sod cut it out. You might have to get a small chainsaw and some friends and stuff and a pickup truck and pull small trees out. You may have to hire an arborist to come out and take a big tree out. Whatever it is, you start to form a pathway to success. And once you're on that path, it starts to domino really fast and you're able to go. So where to start? You start with a desire, you start with the plan, you start with an execution date, a design, and a budget. And once you get that much knowledge in your head, everything else will start to fall in place. I hope that answers a good portion of the question, and I just basically skimmed over that 15-step DIY checklist. So if you're interested, go check it out. So on the flip side of that, question number 2 is, how do I go about hiring a landscape contractor or designer? So I'm not going to be the person that's going to be putting it in, but I don't know really how to go about hiring somebody to come in and do such a thing. It's one thing if you know your computer crashed and you need Geek Squad. It's another thing that if you need to paint the inside of your house, you can call a painter. Well, landscape contractors, especially in various places like where I used to work, there were several companies. And it doesn't take anything, and we're kind of beyond the age of yellow pages now. It doesn't take anything to do a Google search or local listing search or go to the local nursery and get some business cards. I used to leave business cards at the local nursery all the time and get quite a few calls from it. So you just have to get past the shyness level and either email the company if they have a website or pick up the phone and schedule an appointment. There's a couple of things in that initial part that is going to be a huge tell of whether you're going to hire a company or not. And I'll tell you this from the standpoint of a retired landscape contractor. Number 1, if you've left an email inquiring or you've made a phone call and left a message, number 1 thing, do they call you back? That is a huge tell as far as the accountability, punctuality, and professionalism of that company. If they take a week and a half to call you back, that's a red flag in my book. My company that I used to run, I know it was a small mom and pop design and build firm, but our motto didn't have anything to do about landscapes. It had to do with, we call you back. That one sentence got me hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work. People would be just gobsmacked that they got a call back on the same business day. And I had a kind of a routine. I'd get up early and I'd have all my stuff ready the night before. I'd go to the job site and put in my time. When I got home, I'd get cleaned up, and the very first thing I'd do is check my voicemail, whether it was the old, machine or it was my telephone, my cell phone. And just by calling people back and having a calendar in front of me, I'd make the appointment the same day. That was all predicated on the customer actually answering the phone. But 90% of the time, if people were reaching out, I could get a hold of them within a call or two. That alone. So that's one of the big tells. The other one is when they show up, they treat you with respect. They don't treat you like a dummy. They treat you like a potential customer that you're planning on handing thousands of dollars over to, and they don't kind of show off. There are some contractors out there that want to show up in their $150,000 truck. They want to show you their book of fame. They want to tell you how great they are. And shut up and listen to your customer. What does your customer want? Show them the project site and what your amateur ideas are. If they sit there and listen to you and they offer some suggestions and everything, those are the kind of people you want to start focusing on. Not the braggarts. Not the braggarts at all. They may do some good work, but they're not going to be good communicators, and they're certainly not going to be good people. You want to have someone that's going to kind of hold your hand and guide you through the process, tell you the step-by-step of how they do business, and then also educate you as a customer on contractual law, on their time frame, how far out they are. This is the kind of information that is very valuable to a customer that's dipping their toe in a pool that they're not really sure they want to swim in. So remember, you don't want braggarts. You want punctual and accountable communication. You want someone that'll talk to you at your level, not their level. Like when you go to the doctor and they say, oh, well, you have this, 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 and then this. And you just kind of cock your head like a dog going, what did you just say? Can you put that in English and in layman's terms? That's what you want to hear from your contractor. Once they're on site and you have that good chemistry, which includes all the things I've just spoke about, then you're on the right track and you probably can dial it down to that particular person that's just going to rise above the other 3 or 4 people that you've talked to. So remember that. Then once ground is broke, once you've entered into a contract with them, you know as the customer what's going to be happening and when. Then you have the day or every other day type of communication. They're going to want to tell you, hey, today we trenched everything out. Try to keep the kids and the dogs out of the trenched out area for now. What I used to do on irrigation or drainage day, I would tell them ahead of time, hey, we're going to have open trenches tomorrow. I would appreciate if you didn't have the kids or the dogs back there because people can get hurt. And then I would try to get all the work done in an 8 or 10 hour day and get those trenches covered back up. Liability for contractors. And lastly, regarding contractors, you want someone who's legitimate. They have some education behind them. They have some experience. They've been in business a little while, although that's not always a good tell. And they're bonded and insured. So if something happens, they put the bucket of their skid steer through your side wall. You know that you're going to be covered based on their insurance. Okay, so I hope that answers that question pretty deeply. Question number 3 came from a gentleman who I actually consulted with this year, and he said, hey, I'm in zone 10 down in Southern California. Can I landscape my backyard in January? Is that a good idea? Well, number one, I thank you for your business. We had a good 1 hour and 15-minute consultation, and I think I put him on the right track as far as irrigation and piping sizes and number of valves and other stuff. But the answer to his question was, of course you can in zone 10. Right now, up here in zone 4, yeah, not so much. I know Maestro will give you a little bit of B-roll as far as what we're dealing with out here today and what the landscape probability is for the next several months. 0. But down there in Zone 10 in SoCal, the only thing that faces in adversity a landscape project in January would be weather of accumulated rainfall. If you get a really wet situation where maybe your yard doesn't drain out and it stays damp and muddy, and that's the only thing that can kind of put you off. But if you have a rain or two and then you've got a long range forecast of maybe 2 weeks, because we know SoCal doesn't get a lot of rain all the time, and you can get out there and get after it with all those steps in place, absolutely in Zone 10 you can. I worked in Zone 9A, and hey, in January, there were lots of Januaries. The biggest landscape project I ever did towards the end of my contractual career started in January. And it lasted from January to early May. And it was the biggest one I ever did. But it was only a couple of days on that project that actually put me off because of a heavy rainstorm. And I just let it dry out and got back on it when I could do it. But a 4-month project, yep, it was a big one. So in Zone 10, absolutely. So to take that question one step further, I would say certainly Zone 10, certainly Zone 11, Zone 9, A and B, even Zone 8, depending on the season. You know, what kind of weather has been there and what does the project entail? You know, if you're going to do like an enclosed raised bed vegetable garden, chances are if you had 2 inches of snow on the ground and maybe an inch of frost line or 2 inches of frost line, you could still put in that raised vegetable garden without any problem. Now you get off into Zone 7, 6, 5, 4, no, not so much. We got a frost line that's probably about 6-8 inches deep now and growing by the hour, and we're not going to be able to do anything for several months. But lucky you down in SoCal. Just don't like the state as much anymore. Really don't. Okay, question number 4. And it came from a lady, not saying guys don't know this either, but came from a lady. It says, can you name the top 7 or 10 hand tools that a new homeowner should have to take on the new career of being a homeowner? I think it's a pretty good question, especially if you're coming from an apartment or a condo life. You've had moan blows do everything around you with your HOA and all that other stuff, and now, bam, you're a homeowner and you don't have so much as a rake in the garage. It's a good idea to kind of know. So I just pulled these out randomly, not in any particular order of importance, but it's something that you should consider. Number 1 is a square or flathead shovel. It's also called a transfer shovel, and it basically is kind of an easy way to scoop stuff off of a durable surface, either a driveway or a patio. You can scoop and put stuff in a wheelbarrow or move something from one place to another. The second is a roundhead shovel or a pointed shovel, and that's one that you can actually dig in the ground and excavate soil out. It's not really good for trenching, although you could, if you got fancy with it, you could dig trenches with it. But it's basically made for excavating soil, turning soil over, planting, that kind of stuff. The next one would be, actually there's 2 more. One would be a steel tine rake, one that you could actually push gravels or dirt, and you can kind of do a small scale leveling process with it. That's very good. And also a grass or a flex rake. Those are really good, and you've seen me use one when we were doing the mulching of the raised beds that we did here at Brook and Pond earlier this year. Those 2 are the basic rakes that I would get into, steel tined and flex or grass rake. The next one is a 4-pound pole axe. You can get one, a hatchet, that kind of stuff, but I would suggest an axe and kind of learn how to use it before you go out there and start swinging and flip-flops. But good if you get into a project and you have to maybe cut a root or 2, and you don't want to get into a chainsaw, electric or gas just yet. You just want to cut a few roots because you're putting a walkway through or a drainage line, and you have some surface roots. It's nice to have a good sharp axe. The next one is kind of, it's what they call a pickaxe or a pickmatic. And it's a pick on one end and kind of an axe on the other, or a pointed pick on the other. And it's probably one of the tools that I used quite a bit, especially when I was doing trenching or trench cleaning. Very, very useful. They come in a couple different sizes. They have lightweight ones, and then they have a little heavier duty ones. But certainly one of those, and that could help you skiff off weeds. You could dig a trench if you had to. You could fine-tune edges of patios or walkways if you had to. Very useful tool for multiple uses in the landscape. Now, if you're getting into drainage systems or irrigation, I might suggest a 4 or 6-inch trenching shovel. And it can be not only for digging, but more importantly, if you've rented a trencher for a day and you need to go back in and clean those trenches out, having a good angled 4-inch or 6-inch trenching shovel, very, very important tool. Another one, and people don't think about this, but I can remember being at Weed Patch Ranch, and I used this particular tool probably as much as shovels and rakes, and it's the hula hoe, the looped hoe that is used for weeding. And we had, no matter what I did, because of the neighbors that I had who didn't take care of their properties quite as much, so I had a lot of stuff blow in all the time. And I'd have to go out there once a month and I'd just skiff along the soil and knock those weeds down before they got really established. And it was really easy on the back, easy on the shoulders, easy on everything. And as long as it was sharp, which is really easy to put an edge on them, very, very useful tool, very lightweight in your hands. And they come in a couple different lengths. Oftentimes, one that is about as tall as the user or just a skosh under is a very good. That way you're not having to bend over to do a lot of your work. You can stand upright and just go back and forth and shuffle with that hula hoe rake, and it doesn't dig in, it stays right on the surface. So also a very useful tool. If you get into landscaping projects or gravel driveways of any size or length, I might suggest a leveling rake, either a 30-inch or a 4-foot leveling rake. And those are really good for leveling out larger areas, lawn areas, getting ready for prep. If you're doing patios and you've had to put some base material down, you can level it out. If it's a large place, you can level it out a lot quicker and then fine tune it with a steel tine rake. But a good leveling rake is also a very useful tool. Lastly, depending on where you live, if you're like us here at Brook and Pond, a good straight digging bar sometimes is appropriate, with a square end at one and a pointed end at the other. It's very good as far as digging holes or removing a rock or getting into soils that are going to kind of laugh at you a little bit. I'm not talking about a jackhammer. It's just a straight digging bar, usually about 5.5 feet long. They can be kind of heavy, but they have to be in order to break up the types of soil that they're intended to be used in. So that would probably be my top 8 or 9 that I would get into. And to keep it shorter, I'm not even going to get into power tools, handheld power tools. Question number 5 is a really broad termed one. And it came from a guy really early on in 2024. He says, how do I even know if certain plants will grow in my area? Most of the time, the big tell is, what does your nursery carry? Most of the time, an educated nursery, not always the box stores. We have shown you on this channel box stores that sometimes get plants in, and they're definitely a perennial plant, but not for the area that we were in. I can remember looking at plant material that were rated for zone 10 through 8, and we were having them up here in zone 4, and you have to treat those as annuals. But most of the time, people just look at them and go, oh, a croton plant out here in the nursery. I want to put this in the front yard in northern Maine. Yeah, that doesn't work. So to know whether that plant works, number one, it probably has a tag on it. A tag of just the simple name of the plant, but more importantly, it probably has an informational tag that will show you on the back side or even sometimes the front side what area of the country and world it'll actually work in. And what you want to know is what area is yours. Say like we're in zone 4. So we need something that will go from zone 3 to zone 5. And that's the range that I shoot for. But mainly it's zone 4. And if you have something that says grows zone 7 through 10, and you're in zone 6, that borderline zone will all be dependent on what kind of a microclimate you might have. Oftentimes, someone will get something for zone 6, but it's only rated for 7. Well, you could get through it if you mulched it heavily or tied it up or a frost blanket, something like that. You could probably get it through that, but you get away from 2 zones away from what it's supposed to, you're kind of wasting your money. You have probably less than a 50-50 shot that you get it through. Now, if you have little microclimates within your zone, meaning you don't have a lot of wind that gets into your area, you're on the south side of the building where on a sunny winter day it may be cold, but that south wall or that south foundation bed might warm up enough to keep this plant happy. You could always try it if you want to, but the tag itself or a quick talk to the nursery staff, again, educated nursery staff, or a quick Google search. I mean, that's the easiest way that you can tell. Okay, this one came in about 2 years ago, and it's something that I see on YouTube and other things over the past few years, and more importantly, when I was actually on the job. And that was, what trends have you seen that changed over the years or decades in residential landscapes? In other words, the person wants to know, hey, what's kind of in vogue right now? Well, 45 years ago, when I actually was out there on that tree line looking at a beautiful ground cover that I told you at the top of the show, back then, a lot of things in the 70s, 1970s, was foundational plants. Foundation around the house, green grass, the proprietary tree in the front yard, couple trees in the backyard, and that was about it. Nowadays, we have migrated into landscapes that and COVID was a big deal about this. We migrated towards the staycation yards. People who were in lockdown and didn't do a lot of stuff, they got off into kind of big and small luxury items for their yards. Things like fire pits and outdoor kitchens. Now, kitchens have been around a while, but they were the real high-end part of landscapes that you didn't see very often in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s. And now, they're kind of commonplace in many places. But fire pits, kitchens, water features, especially the pondless waterfalls and ponds, play areas for the kids, but on a more elaborate scale, play areas for the pets, definitely. One of the trends that I saw in the early part of the 2000s, and it was because of where I worked, but it was the maintenance levels of stuff. Remember, my business stayed in business because of the California and Western US drought. It was the only reason I stayed in business, or I would have probably tanked like so many other companies did. And what it was I was ripping out thirsty lawns and putting in lawnless landscapes with drip irrigation and far less maintenance over the long haul. So when people are looking for a trend, especially when you have both mom and dad working 40 plus hours a week, maybe you have small kids, or the weekends you got the grade school and junior high school age kids that always have something going on the weekends, soccer or softball or baseball or football or whatever. And the yard just goes, hey, you guys remember me? So low maintenance, getting it down into the quarterly level of maintenance and not the weekly is very important. Yes, you can always go out and hire a mow and blow. You can always do that. But remember, mow and blows serve a very, very good function in our communities. I used to be one very short term. I did not like being tied to a route, though. I really didn't. But there's not many mow and blows out there that wash off their mowers every single time, every single place. So that mower has been through all the yards on their route. And you can imagine that probably many of those yards aren't as nice as yours. They could have full of dog crap, they could have Bermuda grass at seed, they could have all kinds of weeds that are in seed, burr clovers and everything, and they get done mowing that yard, they throw it up into the truck, and they head to your place, and they fire it up again, and everything that's in that mower deck is not always going to go into the bag. Some of it's going to be left behind. Free present to you. So just be aware of that. So low maintenance, that kind of stuff. The other thing is dwarf plant material. Compared to the 70s when I got in the business as to now, there are a lot of dwarf hybrid type of plant material because suburban residential yards are a lot smaller than they used to be. It's not uncommon to see a lot of 50 or 60 foot wide by 100 foot or even 75 foot lots with a big 2-story on it now. So kind of a small yard in the back and certainly a small yard in the front. And you can't have regular pittosporums or regular loropetalums that get 10 by 10 for these yards and have anything more than a couple of plants before it takes over your whole yard. So there's a lot of dwarf type of plant material. Lastly, with this, I'll say the cost of landscaping has changed dramatically. I can remember advertising going out for the Navalaise nursery where I started my career and seeing 99-cent tam junipers on sale. That same tam juniper nowadays, especially where we have to shop, will be anywhere from $10 to $17. And it's just astronomically out of freaking control because it's almost getting to the point that the average Jane and John homeowner can't do anything elaborate because the cost factor of plants has increased so dramatically. So I'd say that would probably be the big trends that I have seen over the past 40 years. That's what I have for you this week. Hey, I'd really invite you to head over to the website, check it out. You might find that 15-step very, very valuable for anything that you might want to consider next year as a landscape project. or it's a great gift idea, as well as the ebook and the digital course. What a great stocking stuffer. As always, guys, to your landscape success. I'll see you guys next week, and I'll say bye for now.